Life has a strange way of teaching us lessons. The more we try to control every little detail, the outcomes, the timing, the way people respond, the heavier everything begins to feel. We plan carefully. We think ahead. We try to stay one step in front of uncertainty. And yet, instead of clarity, we find tension. Instead of progress, we find resistance. Somewhere along the way, we stop living and start managing. We manage everything, including our own peace. The Stoics saw this clearly. The problem isn't effort, it's attachment. It's the quiet belief that things must go a certain way for us to feel okay. Marcus Aurelius wrote about accepting what unfolds, not as weakness, but as strength. Because the moment you stop fighting reality, you stop wasting energy on what was never yours to control. In that space, something shifts. The mind settles. The pressure loosens. Clarity begins to return. And when that happens, life starts to move differently, not because you forced it, but because you finally stopped resisting it.
Welcome to True Stoic Journal, the path to inner control.
The psychology of the silent struggle. You can feel it building quietly, almost beneath the surface. That frustration of doing everything the way it's supposed to be done and still not arriving where you expected. You stay disciplined. You follow the steps. And yet, the result feels delayed, distorted, or completely absent. At first, it feels like responsibility. Like you're being careful. Intentional. In control. But slowly, that intention tightens. It becomes heavy. You start replaying conversations. Questioning decisions that were already made. Adjusting small details that didn't need adjusting. Convincing yourself that one more change might finally unlock the outcome you've been chasing. And here's the strange part, the harder you try to fix it, the more complicated everything becomes. What once felt simple now feels layered with pressure. You're no longer acting, you're calculating. No longer moving forward, you're trying to manage every possible outcome in advance. That shift changes everything. The process stops feeling natural. It starts to feel forced. That force creates friction, not physically, but mentally. Your mind doesn't turn off. It keeps scanning, adjusting, anticipating. As if life were a system that could be perfected if you just thought hard enough. But life doesn't open up under pressure. It resists it. The burden of ghost outcomes. When we fixate on a specific outcome, we create what psychologists call cognitive tunneling. We become so obsessed with the destination that we lose the ability to see the path. This obsession creates a phantom weight. We aren't just doing the work, we are carrying the fear of that work not being enough. Effort isn't the problem. Discipline isn't the problem. The issue is when effort turns into control. Effort stays grounded, it focuses on what you can do right now. Control reaches beyond that, it tries to manage outcomes that haven't happened yet. It tries to predict reactions and secure certainty. And in doing that, it pulls you away from what's actually in front of you. You stop being present with your actions because your mind is already trying to secure a future that isn't guaranteed. That's where the tension comes from, not from doing too much, but from trying to hold on to something that isn't yours to hold. Over time, this affects everything. Progress stops feeling satisfying. You achieve something, but your mind immediately moves to the next concern. Is it enough? Is it happening fast enough? What if it doesn't lead where it's supposed to? The internal interference of the ego, that constant evaluation, drains the meaning out of what you're doing. Growth turns into pressure. Effort turns into obligation. And slowly, everything starts to feel heavier than it actually is. There's a quiet truth in this: when you try to control too many variables at once, you don't gain clarity, you lose it. Your attention becomes scattered. Your decisions become reactive. It's like holding water in your hands. The tighter you squeeze, the faster it slips away. That instinct is exactly what creates the problem. That's why feeling stuck isn't always about a lack of movement, it's often about too much internal interference. Beneath all of this, there's usually a belief driving it, the belief that if you don't control things, they'll fall apart. But that belief comes from fear, not clarity. It assumes your power lies in controlling outcomes, when in reality, your power lies in how you show up to the process itself. The difference between care and attachment, refining your approach where necessary, is vital, but not to dictate the exact moment when everything should come together. That part doesn't belong to you. Once that becomes clear, the tension around timing begins to loosen. This doesn't mean impatience disappears completely, it still shows up from time to time. But it no longer dictates your actions. You stay steady. You continue moving forward even when there's no immediate reward. And over time, that steadiness becomes one of your strongest advantages. Because while others might rush, react, and burn out trying to speed things up, you're building something more sustainable. Something that isn't dependent on constant validation or immediate outcomes. When the results do begin to show, they carry a different kind of weight, because they were built on a foundation that wasn't rushed, forced, or compromised. Chasing versus aligning, a neurological shift. What once felt like chasing starts to feel unnecessary. Chasing always carries a certain kind of energy, it's driven by fear. Fear of missing out, fear of falling behind, fear of not being enough. That urgency comes at a cost. It pulls your attention in too many directions. You might take on things that don't truly align, say yes when you should say no, and rush decisions that need reflection. Alignment feels different. It doesn't rush. It starts with clarity. You understand what you're doing and why. That clarity acts as a filter. It allows you to move forward without needing to grab onto everything that comes your way. Seneca captured this perfectly: if a man knows not to which port he sails, no wind is favorable. When you are aligned, you don't need every opportunity to be favorable, only the ones that move you closer to where you are actually going. This shift isn't just philosophical, it's biological. When you chase, your body is in a state of high cortisol. Your survival instincts are flared. But when you align, you operate from the prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain responsible for logic, creativity, and long-term planning. You aren't just working harder, you are working smarter because your brain isn't preoccupied with survival. The mastery of mental rehearsal vision alone is insufficient unless it is fully experienced within the mind and body. Neuroscience demonstrates that the brain encodes imagined experiences in a manner similar to real ones. Each time a scenario is vividly visualized, neural circuits associated with emotion and coordination are activated. This is why elite performers, athletes, musicians, orators, rehearse outcomes repeatedly in their minds. The Stoics practiced this through mental visualization, imagining themselves encountering adversity and acting with reason. This isn't mere fantasy, it is a rehearsal for the nervous system. If your vision lacks emotional depth, it is shallow. The mind requires felt experience. The pride of small victories and the focus required for disciplined effort must be felt in the imagination first. Emotional engagement transforms a distant idea into an internal reality, one that shapes behavior instinctively. The architecture of sustainable systems, however, even with a clear mind and a rehearsed vision, structure is required. Most people pursue outcomes without considering the architecture required to sustain them. Energy without systems dissipates. Systems are extensions of internal alignment. They translate intention into tangible reality by creating reliable pathways for energy to flow. Research shows that behaviors repeated in predictable patterns reduce cognitive load, preserving mental energy for higher-level challenges. By establishing routines that align with your goals, the energy invested in each action is magnified. Success is rarely about working harder against chaos, it is about designing conditions where energy flows naturally toward purpose. The biological cost of inconsistency: when we act out of urgency, we are inconsistent. We start a project with 100% intensity, burn out in 3 days, and then disappear for a month. This start-stop cycle is the enemy of mastery. True discipline is boring. It is the ability to do the work when the excitement has faded and the results haven't appeared yet. This is where understanding timing becomes a lived experience. Growth doesn't always show itself in obvious ways. Sometimes it's happening beneath the surface. Skills are developing, perspective is shifting, but because none of it produces instant results, it can feel like nothing is happening. This is where you must resist the impulse to push harder or adjust aggressively. Not all movement is progress, and not all stillness is stagnation. The freedom of detachment. There is a certain kind of person who moves through situations with a sense of ease. They're focused but not tense. It's not that their lives are free from difficulty, it's that they don't carry those things in a way that weighs them down. They don't approach every situation with the need to control it. Instead, they trust their ability to respond. That trust removes a significant amount of pressure. They're not trying to eliminate uncertainty, they're moving through it. Carl Jung once observed, "What you resist, not only persists, but will grow in size." When you approach life with tension, you end up amplifying the very uncertainty you're trying to eliminate. Breaking the scarcity loop. This difference becomes even more noticeable when you consider the mindset of scarcity. When someone believes there isn't enough time, success, opportunity, they start to hold on tightly. They rush. They compare. They close themselves off. But someone who operates from a sense of trust recognizes that timing shifts and outcomes aren't always predictable. Instead of reacting with fear, they respond with steadiness. When you stop viewing life as a race against others, you realize the only person you are competing with is the version of yourself from yesterday. This realization kills the need for fast results. It replaces urgency with infinite patience. As the saying goes, the man who loves walking will walk further than the man who loves the destination. The refinement of perception. As this begins to settle, attention naturally shifts inward. The real weight of experience rarely comes from the event itself, it comes from the meaning you assign to it. Two people can walk through the same situation and carry completely different outcomes. One walks away feeling defeated, while the other walks away with a quieter response, seeing the same moment as part of a longer path, something to learn from rather than something to be defined by. The difference isn't in what happened, it's in how the mind chose to frame it. This is where control takes on a deeper meaning. It moves beyond actions and into interpretation. External events come and go, often without warning. They don't ask for permission. But the space between the event and your reaction, that space belongs to you. The power of the conscious pause. Within that space lies the ability to decide how something is understood. Not in a forced way, but in a grounded way that allows you to see clearly instead of reacting immediately. When that space is ignored, thoughts take over automatically. A setback becomes a conclusion. A delay becomes a failure. Once you begin to notice these thoughts, to observe them without immediately accepting them, the grip they once had begins to loosen. This doesn't mean every negative thought disappears. It means you stop treating every thought as a fact. This creates a different relationship with your own mind. Instead of being pulled in every direction, you begin to stand slightly apart, observing rather than reacting. The Stoic discipline of action. Nothing here is asking you to stop trying. The shift is about refining how you engage. You still act, but the quality of that effort changes. It becomes grounded instead of rushed. Focused instead of scattered. Steady instead of reactive. This release creates a kind of quiet confidence. It comes from knowing that you can act with clarity regardless of what happens. Epictetus expressed this: make the best use of what is in your power, and take the rest as it happens. There's no resistance in that statement. Just a clear direction. The final transformation, becoming untouchable. As everything begins to settle into place, there's one final layer that often goes unnoticed: awareness. It's the understanding that this isn't a one-time shift. It's something you return to again and again, especially in moments where the pressure starts creeping back in. Because it will. There will be times when things feel urgent again. In those moments, what matters isn't perfection, it's awareness. That awareness allows you to catch yourself before the old patterns fully take over. You notice when your thoughts start racing. You recognize when your actions begin to carry that familiar tension. And instead of following that pattern, you pause. That pause is small, but it's powerful. It creates space. And within that space, you have a choice. Over time, these small moments of awareness begin to build into something stronger. You don't need to constantly remind yourself of every principle. It becomes natural. Your mind begins to default to a steadier way of thinking. Living without anxious dependence. True happiness, as Seneca reflected, is to enjoy the present without anxious dependence upon the future. When your attention is no longer pulled forward by worry or pressure, you become more present with what you're doing. And in that presence, there's a different kind of satisfaction, not one that depends on results, but one that comes from being fully engaged with the process itself. And from there, everything begins to feel more aligned. Not because life suddenly becomes predictable, but because you're no longer trying to force it into a specific shape. You're working with it instead of against it. You're moving with clarity instead of pressure. Nothing truly meant for you requires you to chase it with desperation. What's meant for you asks for clarity, patience, and the strength to stay grounded while everything unfolds. The moment you stop forcing life, you stop fighting it. And that's when things begin to move in ways you couldn't control, but always needed. The path is before you. It doesn't require you to be perfect. It only requires you to be present. To act with intention. To let go of the rest. If this spoke to something deeper in you, stay with it. Keep building that inner strength. Truly thank you for being a part of Stoic Journal. Stay bold. Stay silent. Stay stoic.